Hello there. The new British government is taking over part of the sharp rise in energy prices. The cost for electricity and heating are to be limited to the equivalent of €2,900 per household. Prime Minister Truss also ruled out an excess profit tax again. So the new Prime Minister Liz Truss is acting, and she's acting fast still. On Thursday, she announced an aid program in the House of Commons to help households and entrepreneurs in the energy crisis. But is it far enough? At around £150 billion, the scheme is even larger than the aid the government gave to the economy during the coronavirus pandemic. However, the poverty of socially disadvantaged households and the threat of bankruptcy in small and medium-sized businesses also surpass everything that the country suffered in terms of economic damage during the corona pandemic. The aid program was the first major act by Truss, who was only appointed Prime Minister by Queen Elizabeth II at Balmoral Castle on Tuesday. However, the political announcements were quickly lost that day, because on the evening of September 8th, it became public that the Queen had died. As early as noon, the news broke that the Queen's health had deteriorated worryingly. At the time, Truss had just presented her programme in the House of Commons, in contrast to Boris Johnson's reign in a much calmer, factual and conciliatory tone. The debate between the government benches and the opposition therefore developed into a factual discussion for the first time in 3 years, instead of a roaring exchange of blows with mutual insults. In order to protect private households from exorbitant price increases, energy prices in Great Britain and Northern Ireland are being frozen at a level that would mean an annual bill of £2,500 for a normal household. That's still a hefty price increase from the £1,330 the average household paid last year. But it saves them from having to pay the previously announced price of £3,500 from October 1st and around £4,000 from January, including the £400 aid per household that has already been cancelled by the Johnson government, and this means that energy prices will freeze at the current level. Socially disadvantaged households and pensioners receive more help anyway. In a similar way, energy prices for companies will be frozen, but initially only for half a year. Subsequently, the weak sectors that are particularly dependent on energy prices, such as the hotel and catering industry, are to be helped. Above all, this is intended to protect medium-sized companies and smaller entrepreneurs from having to file for bankruptcy in the coming months and thus causing high unemployment. Entrepreneurs usually have annual contracts that, when they expire, have to be replaced by abruptly higher tariffs. Price increases for companies have recently amounted to 500%, a level that pub owners, shopkeepers, and even schools would no longer have been able to afford. Who can do that? Truss said the aid would reduce inflation by up to 5 percentage points. The rate of price increases is currently just under 10%, which, without the aid package, would have risen to 13% at least by the end of the year, according to estimates by the Bank of England, and according to forecasts from the City of London, to well over 15% next year. According to estimates in the British media, the total package should be around £150 billion, the equivalent of around €170 billion. It was at this point that the ideological differences between the new government and the opposition became clear. Labour leader Keir Starmer has called on the government to increase the tax on utilities, 170 billion special profits from the current 65%, which has been in place since January, and use it to fund the bailout package. Truss flatly refused. Labour just doesn't change. It's always about taxing higher, she claimed. Her government is strictly against higher taxes. Low taxes bring investment and ultimately growth. Our government is pro-growth, argued Truss. Starmer, on the other hand, recalled that BP's UK chief executive, Louise Kingham, said in July that a windfall tax would have no impact on BP's investments. Truss, who also worked at Shell before a political career, has put together an ideologically quite dogmatic cabinet. 8 members of the cabinet belong to the European Research Group, the ERG, so we will know where this is going. Several ministers are also members of the Free Enterprise Group. Both are groupings within the faction that stand to the right of traditional politics and strictly follow one line: small state, little state intervention, low taxes, free markets, support for the private sector, deregulation, and more private investment for more growth and jobs. The massive state intervention, which she has now decided anyway, was presented by Truss as an emergency program. The new Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, will announce at the end of the month how the aid package is to be financed, presumably through higher debt, which can then be paid off more easily over many years with the alleged high economic growth. The problem is, the debt-financed aid for the economy is a fiscal policy boost that is often counterproductive in times of high inflation. Voices in the City of London warned that this could result in the Bank of England accelerating rate hikes. Truss didn't just stop at short-term help. She also announced a program to transform the UK from an energy importer to a net energy exporter by 2040. The temporary ban on fracking is to be lifted with immediate effect. The government expects that up to 100 new wells could be created in the short term, and that production could even be resumed in 6 months. Great Britain had stopped fracking in the face of massive resistance from the local population in recent years. Critics warn, however, that popular resistance is continuing and that fracking in the UK is nowhere near the production volume that would have a lasting impact on prices. At the same time, modern green energies such as solar power, wind power, hydroelectric power, and tidal power are to be accelerated with better planning. The UK already has the largest offshore wind turbines, but not on land. Truss also emphasized that the construction of modular small nuclear power plants should be accelerated. The UK has not built a new plant since the Sizewell B nuclear power station came online in 1995. The government also wants to reform the market mechanism used to determine energy prices. Currently, producers of cheap green energy, such as wind energy, are allowed to change their electricity at the same price as more expensive electricity from gas. Truss wants to change this. She also wants to ensure long-term, cheaper supply contracts from abroad. At the same time, a £40 billion fund in cooperation with the Bank of England is to ensure that smaller companies no longer run into liquidity problems. In Great Britain, 31 smaller energy suppliers have collapsed so far, which bought energy on the market, but at the same time had entered into fixed, cheaper supply contracts with private households. And I'll see you in my next video, and we will talk about the energy minister that has to do all this. I'll be back.